Step out of the car. I know you're confused. I'll explain everything to you.
A respected school teacher, an under 14 student, and a mother's phone that turned the entire story upside down. When the messages came to light, police weren't just shocked, they were confused. Because what the teacher, Christina Formella, was saying wasn't something anyone expected. And when she gave her very first statement in court, it became clear this case was never going to be a normal one. I'm bringing you this case on criminal women, where I examine the complex psychology behind female perpetrators. If cases like this interest you, subscribe now, because I publish 2 new cases every week. On a quiet day in Illinois, a mother was doing something completely ordinary. She was setting up a new phone for her teenage son, just transferring data, just signing into iCloud, nothing that should have changed her life forever. But then the messages appeared. Not from a classmate, not from a friend. They were from her son's teacher. The words were intimate, emotional, completely inappropriate. And once she saw them, there was no way to unsee them. Within hours, police were involved. Within a day, a respected special education teacher and soccer coach was sitting in handcuffs. Her name was Christina Formella. She was 30 years old, and what she would say next shocked investigators almost as much as the evidence itself. When confronted, Christina didn't react the way most accused people do. She didn't panic. She didn't express fear or confusion. Instead, she seemed annoyed, almost offended. And then she said it. She claimed people were targeting her because she was attractive, that she was being judged for her looks, and that she was too pretty to be what they were accusing her of being. This wasn't just denial, it was something deeper. What stood out to investigators was not just what Christina said, but how she said it. There was no visible fear of consequences, no concern about the seriousness of the allegations. Instead, her words suggested entitlement, a belief that the rules simply worked differently for her. Detectives later noted that this mindset appeared again and again throughout the case, not only in her statements but in her behavior before and after the arrest. It wasn't impulsive, it was consistent, and that consistency would later become a key part of the prosecution's argument. Christina worked closely with vulnerable students. She taught special education. She coached soccer. Parents trusted her. Students admired her. She was known as supportive, approachable, and kind. The kind of teacher people describe as one of the good ones. That reputation would later become a shield she tried to hide behind. The victim in this case was a teenage boy, 14 years old when it started, recovering from an injury, struggling academically, needing support. Christina stepped in, offering tutoring and encouragement. At first, everything looked professional. Messages went through school systems. Conversations were about schoolwork. But slowly, the boundaries began to shift. She gave him her personal number. She said it was for educational games. Then the tone changed. Compliments turned personal. Messages became frequent, private, emotional. What investigators later uncovered was not a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a pattern. By early 2023, the communication had moved completely outside school oversight. Texts, FaceTime calls, social media interactions. She positioned herself as the one adult who truly understood him, the one person he could trust. And when a child starts believing that, dependency forms fast. Experts later explained how grooming often looks harmless at the beginning. Extra attention, private encouragement, a sense of being special. For a young teenager, especially one already struggling, this kind of focus can feel comforting rather than dangerous. That is what makes it so effective. By the time the lines are clearly crossed, the child is already emotionally entangled, confused about responsibility, and afraid of losing the connection they've been taught to value. By late 2023, the relationship had crossed into physical territory. Not once, not twice. Investigators would later document at least 50 separate encounters, many of them inside the school, during school hours, in classrooms with locked doors. Places meant for learning had become places of exploitation. What made this case especially disturbing wasn't just what happened. It was how carefully it was documented. When police searched Christina's phone, they found something chilling. A private digital diary. Pages and pages of notes describing her thoughts, feelings, and version of the relationship. But she didn't write like someone hiding a crime. Investigators described the diary as one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in the case, not because it was graphic, but because of how normal it sounded to her. The entries showed planning, emotional calculation, and self-justification, and there was no sign she saw herself as doing harm. Instead, she framed events in a way that protected her self-image, even when the facts clearly showed otherwise. She wrote like someone living in a romance. In her notes, she described arguments, jealousy, breakups, and reconciliation. She accused the teenage boy of cheating on her. She called him manipulative. She portrayed herself as the one who had been hurt. In her mind, she wasn't an adult abusing power. She was a woman betrayed by a boyfriend. At one point, she even wrote about waiting to end things until after her wedding, after his graduation, as if both events were equal milestones in a normal relationship. That detail alone revealed everything investigators needed to know. She knew his age, she knew her role, and she knew it was wrong. While all of this was happening, so Christina was planning her own wedding. In the summer of 2024, she married her longtime partner. Photos showed smiles, celebrations, a honeymoon overseas. To the outside world, she looked like someone living a perfect life, a dedicated teacher, a new bride, a respected professional. But behind the scenes, the messages continued. According to investigators, this period showed how completely the situation had slipped out of control. Even as Christina prepared for marriage and publicly stepped into a new chapter of her life, she continued communicating in secret. Prosecutors later argued that this proved the behavior was not emotional confusion or a momentary lapse, but a conscious choice made again and again. Each message sent after that point carried even greater weight, because it showed awareness, risk, and persistence. To investigators, and this was no longer about secrecy, it was about entitlement, a belief that she could maintain separate realities without consequences, and that neither her professional role nor the law would ever fully catch up to her. When the case finally broke open in March 2025, Christina was arrested, and even then she stuck to her story. She claimed the student had accessed her phone, that he had sent messages to himself, that he deleted evidence, that he framed her. When that explanation failed, she returned to her central defense. She said she was being targeted because of her appearance. Investigators didn't just rely on messages, they built a timeline. January 2023, the first contact. February, personal communication. March, escalation. December, physical encounters. 2 full years of behavior, supported by texts, photos, call logs, and her own words. A grand jury eventually indicted her on 55 felony charges. The potential sentence, if convicted, could reach decades in prison. Even facing that reality, Christina appeared calm, confident, holding hands with her husband in court, still performing the role she believed in. Public reaction was intense. The case spread quickly online. People couldn't believe what they were hearing, a teacher claiming beauty as a defense. Legal experts called it one of the most narcissistic arguments they had ever seen. Eventually, the judge banned cameras from the courtroom, describing the case as shocking and disturbing. The judge made one thing clear. This was not about appearance. This was about power, control, and harm. Christina was released on strict conditions: GPS monitoring, no contact with minors, no access to schools, and no unsupervised devices. She remained free while awaiting trial, but her life as she knew it was over. Her career was finished, her reputation destroyed, her marriage under immense strain. For the victim, the damage went far deeper. Experts describe what happened as traumatic bonding, when a child is made to feel responsible for an adult's emotions, when affection is mixed with guilt. when boundaries are blurred so deeply that the victim feels complicit in their own abuse. This case forced a difficult conversation. Society often struggles to see women as predators, especially when they are attractive, educated, and well-spoken. Christina understood that bias and tried to use it. But evidence doesn't care about charm. In court, prosecutors described her as calculated, controlling, and fully aware of her actions. They pointed to her diary as proof of premeditation. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't loneliness. It was a sustained campaign of manipulation. As of now, Christina Formella's case continues through the legal system. The outcome will be decided by the courts. But one thing is already certain. Her claim that beauty made her immune collapsed the moment the judge spoke. Because in the end, the law doesn't care how someone looks. It cares about what they did. Cases like this are uncomfortable, but they matter. They remind us that danger doesn't always look the way we expect. If this story made you think, drop a comment and share your thoughts. And if you want more real cases like this, stick around, like the video, and subscribe. We've got many more to uncover.